My son-in-law called me a has-been who should stick to bingo and early bird specials. I'm 72 years old, and I've spent 45 years building something this arrogant kid never bothered to understand. He mocked my outdated clothes at a family dinner, laughed about my flip phone in front of his colleagues, and told my granddaughter I was an embarrassment to their social circle. What he didn't know was that the company where he brags about being a rising executive, I founded it. And the promotion he thought was guaranteed, I'm the one who approves those.
Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from. And if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you.
By the time dessert was served, his entire career was about to change. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't argue. I just made one phone call the next morning. If you're watching this, please subscribe and let me know where you're watching from, because this story starts 4 decades ago when I made a promise to myself about the difference between earning respect and demanding it. That promise would cost my son-in-law more than his pride. Most people look at me and see exactly what my son-in-law sees, a man in his early 70s who drives a 1998 Honda Civic with rust spots and a cracked dashboard. Someone who wears the same 3 polo shirts on rotation, all bought from a department store clearance rack 10 years ago. My sneakers are New Balance Classics from a discount outlet. My watch is a $30 Casio that I've replaced the battery in 4 times. I shop with coupons. I order water at restaurants. I split entrees with my wife because the portions are too big anyway. My daughter married this kid 3 years ago, and I watched him slowly transform from respectful to condescending as he climbed the corporate ladder at Premier Tech Solutions. That's the company name he drops at every family gathering. Premier Tech Solutions, one of the fastest-growing software companies in the Midwest, valued at $300 million, employing over 800 people across 4 states. My son-in-law loves telling everyone he's a senior account manager there, loves mentioning his 6-figure salary, loves talking about his corner office and his executive parking space and the quarterly bonuses that bought him a brand new BMW. What he doesn't love is acknowledging that his father-in-law exists in the same room as his success. The shift happened gradually. At first, he was polite, called me sir, asked about my day, made an effort during holiday dinners. But as his title changed and his salary grew, something else grew too. The assumption that because I drive an old car and wear cheap clothes and use a flip phone, I must be irrelevant, must be someone who never accomplished anything worth mentioning. Must be the kind of old man who peaked decades ago and now just takes up space at family functions. 6 months ago, he started making jokes, little comments about my outdated technology, gentle ribbing about my fashion choices, suggestions that maybe I should upgrade my lifestyle now that my daughter married well. Then the jokes got sharper, more pointed, designed to get laughs from whoever else was in the room. 3 months ago, at my granddaughter's birthday party, he told a story about how I tried to set up his new phone and couldn't figure out the touchscreen. Everyone laughed. I smiled and let it go. 2 months ago, at a backyard barbecue, he asked if I needed help reading the menu because the font was probably too small for my old eyes. More laughter. I ordered my food and said nothing. Last month, at Sunday dinner, he mentioned that his company was hiring for warehouse positions if I wanted to make some extra retirement money. That one stung, but I still didn't respond. The breaking point came 2 weeks ago at what was supposed to be a celebration dinner. My daughter had gotten a promotion at her marketing firm. The whole family gathered at an upscale steakhouse downtown, the kind of place with valet parking and wine lists that require reading glasses. I showed up in my usual clothes, clean but simple. My wife wore a nice dress she's had for years. We parked 3 blocks away to avoid the valet fee. When we walked in, my son-in-law was already holding court at a large table with some of his colleagues from Premier Tech Solutions. Apparently, he'd invited them to join the family celebration. My daughter looked uncomfortable but didn't say anything. The introductions were painful. "This is my father-in-law," my son-in-law said with a smirk. "He's retired. Used to do some business stuff back in the day. Nothing like what we do now, obviously. Technology moves fast." His colleagues nodded politely, but I could see their eyes doing the math. Old man, cheap clothes, probably living on Social Security and whatever small pension he managed to scrape together. One of them asked what kind of business I used to run. Before I could answer, my son-in-law jumped in. "Nothing major. Small-time stuff. This was back when people still used fax machines and yellow pages. Different era entirely." The table laughed. Even my daughter smiled weakly. I ordered the cheapest steak on the menu and water with lemon. My son-in-law ordered a $150 bottle of wine and made sure everyone knew the price point. Spent 10 minutes discussing the vintage with the sommelier while I sat there invisible. Dinner progressed and the conversation centered entirely on Premier Tech Solutions. My son-in-law dominated every topic, talked about the major client he just closed, the promotion he was expecting any day now, the company retreat in Aspen next month, how the executive team was really taking notice of his contributions. His colleagues chimed in with congratulations and predictions about his bright future. Nobody asked me a single question. Then came the moment that changed everything. My granddaughter, sweet kid, 9 years old, asked me what I did for work before I retired. I opened my mouth to answer, but my son-in-law cut me off again. Grandpa did some computer stuff way back when, like really basic stuff, before real technology existed. He probably doesn't even understand what we do at Premier Tech. It's pretty advanced. My granddaughter looked confused. But Grandpa is really smart. He helps me with my homework all the time. My son-in-law laughed and ruffled her hair. That's different, sweetie. School stuff is easy. What we do is professional, corporate, high level. We're talking about systems and clients and revenue streams that someone from Grandpa's generation wouldn't be able to wrap their head around. One of his colleagues joined in. No offense, sir, but the tech industry has completely transformed in the last decade alone. What worked 20 or 30 years ago is basically obsolete now. I nodded slowly. You're probably right. Things have changed a lot. My son-in-law leaned back in his chair looking satisfied. See, even he admits it. The industry passed him by. That's why he's living on whatever he managed to save back when savings accounts actually earned interest. The table chuckled. My wife squeezed my hand under the table. I squeezed back. Then I did something I rarely do. I pulled out my phone. Not the flip phone my son-in-law loves to mock. A different phone. The smartphone I keep in my car for actual business. The one with encrypted apps and direct lines to people my son-in-law sees in business magazines. I sent one text message. Need to schedule a board meeting for Monday morning, 9 a.m. sharp, executive conference room. Attendance mandatory. The reply came back in 15 seconds. Done. See you then.
The dinner continued, but something had shifted in the air. My son-in-law didn't notice. He was too busy explaining to his colleagues how the Premier Tech executive team operated, how decisions got made at the highest levels, how the founder was this brilliant but reclusive guy who barely showed up to the office anymore. Probably retired to some beach somewhere, he said confidently. Left the real work to people like us who actually understand modern business. His colleague nodded along. I heard the founder is pretty old school. Built the company back in the 80s or 90s. Probably doesn't even understand half of what we do now with cloud computing and artificial intelligence integration. My son-in-law laughed. Exactly. These old tech guys made their money when things were simple. Now it takes actual skill and education. That's why they hire people like me, people who went to real business schools and understand contemporary markets. I took a sip of water. My wife was watching me carefully. She knows that look, the one where I'm doing calculations in my head, running through scenarios and consequences, deciding whether someone has crossed a line that can't be uncrossed. My daughter tried to change the subject. So, Mom, how's your book club going? But my son-in-law wasn't finished. He turned to me with that smile, the condescending one, the one that says, I'm being generous by including you in this conversation, even though you don't belong here. Hey, I've been meaning to ask, what exactly did you do before you retired? Like specifically, because you always give these vague answers about business and computers, but never any real details. My daughter looked uncomfortable. Honey, maybe we should focus on celebrating my promotion. No, her husband said. I'm genuinely curious. Your dad is always so mysterious about his past. Makes me wonder if there is anything to be mysterious about. The table went quiet. His colleagues looked interested now. This was turning into entertainment, an old man being put on the spot by his successful son-in-law. I could have ended it right there, could have told them everything, but I wanted to see how far he would go. So I said what I always say. I worked in technology, started a small company, did okay for myself. That's pretty much it. My son-in-law leaned forward. Did okay meaning what? Like comfortable retirement or actually successful? Because there's a difference.
I meet a lot of guys your age. You talk about their business days, but when you dig into it, they were basically middle management at companies nobody's heard of.
Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story.
I smiled. You're right. There is a difference. So which one were you? The successful kind or the comfortable kind? I considered the question. Depends on how you define success. My son-in-law scoffed. Success is pretty easy to define. Revenue, market share, industry impact. Did your company do anything that mattered, or was it just one of those small operations that paid the bills? His colleague added helpfully, no shame in small business. Somebody's got to run the local operations. Not everyone can work at the enterprise level like we do. My son-in-law nodded enthusiastically. Exactly. Different leagues entirely. I'm sure whatever you did was important to you and your family, but it's not like you were building something that changed industries or employed hundreds of people or generated the kind of revenue that gets attention from investors. My granddaughter spoke up again, but Grandpa is really good with computers. He fixed my tablet when Mom couldn't figure it out. My son-in-law patted her head. That's nice, sweetie, but fixing tablets and building technology companies are completely different things. Grandpa is good at basic troubleshooting. What we do at Premier Tech is architecture and strategy and innovation. We're creating solutions for Fortune 500 companies. We're operating at a scale that requires advanced degrees and years of specialized experience. I nodded slowly. Sounds impressive. It is impressive, he said. That's why I'm expecting my promotion any day now. Director level. Probably bump me up to $200,000 base salary plus performance bonuses. His colleagues congratulated him. One of them asked if the promotion was definite. My son-in-law waved his hand dismissively, basically guaranteed. I closed the biggest deal of the quarter last month. The executive team knows my value. Plus, I've been networking with the right people, building relationships with decision makers. That's how you get ahead in a company like Premier Tech. You make yourself indispensable to the people who matter. I took another sip of water. Who are the decision makers? He started listing names. The chief operating officer, the vice president of sales, the head of product development. All good people to know, I said. Anyone else? He thought for a moment. Well, obviously the founder, but like I said, he's barely involved anymore. Has a board of directors that handles most of the real decisions. As long as you're good with them, you're golden. And you're good with the board? My son-in-law smiled confidently. I've never met them personally, but my metrics speak for themselves. When you're bringing in the kind of revenue I bring in, the board notices. Trust me, I'm on their radar. The dinner finally ended around 9. My son-in-law picked up the check with a flourish. Let me get this. Early celebration of my upcoming promotion. My daughter protested weakly, but he insisted. Part of being successful is being generous with family, even if some family members are still learning to appreciate the finer things. He glanced at my polo shirt when he said it. His colleagues laughed. We said our goodbyes in the parking lot. My son-in-law was still talking about Premier Tech as we walked away. My wife and I drove home in silence. She finally spoke when we were almost there. You're going to do something, aren't you? It wasn't a question. I kept my eyes on the road. Monday morning. What happens Monday morning? A board meeting. How do you know there's a board meeting? Because I called it. My wife smiled. She's been married to me for 48 years. She knows exactly what that means. Is it bad? Depends on your perspective. For him? Yes, pretty bad. We pulled into our driveway, our modest house in a middle-class neighborhood. 3 bedrooms, built in 1975, paid off 20 years ago. The yard needs work, but I do it myself. The paint is fading, but it keeps the weather out. By most standards, it's unremarkable, but it's ours, completely ours. No mortgage, no debt. Just a simple house that nobody would look at twice. My wife squeezed my hand. You gave him plenty of chances to stop. I did. And he didn't stop. Then he needs to learn. I walked inside and went straight to my office, the small room at the back of the house that my son-in-law has never bothered to look inside. If he had, he might have noticed some things. The multiple computer monitors, the filing cabinets full of corporate documents, the framed cabinets on the wall, the photographs from industry conferences where I'm shaking hands with people whose faces appear on business magazine covers, the awards from technology associations dating back to 1983. But he's never asked to see my office, never expressed any curiosity about what I actually did or how I actually spent 45 years building something that still exists today. I opened my laptop and pulled up the Premier Tech Solutions executive dashboard, real-time company metrics, department performance, individual employee records, revenue tracking, personnel files, everything a founder and chairman of the board would need to understand exactly what's happening in his company at any given moment. I scrolled to the sales department records until I found his file. There he was, 3 years with the company, decent performance metrics, nothing exceptional but nothing terrible either, exactly average in almost every measurable category. His last promotion had been approved 18 months ago. His current salary was actually $160,000, not the $200,000 he'd been implying at dinner. His performance reviews were fine, but included notes about attitude concerns and interpersonal conflicts with teammates. The big deal he'd mentioned closing last month? That was a team effort led by someone else. He'd been a contributing member, but hardly the star player he'd portrayed himself as. I opened a new document and started typing. By midnight, I had a full report prepared. By 2 in the morning, I had sent meeting invitations to all 7 board members. By 3, I had drafted the agenda. By 4, I was finally ready for bed. My wife was already asleep. I lay there in the dark thinking about my granddaughter asking what I did for work, thinking about how my son-in-law had cut me off before I could answer, thinking about all the times over the past year when he could have simply asked me about my life and I would have told him everything. But he never asked. He just assumed. And Monday morning, those assumptions were going to cost him more than he could imagine.
Monday morning arrived with clear skies and temperatures in the mid-60s. Perfect weather for what was about to happen. I woke up at 5 like I do every morning, made coffee, read the news on my tablet, checked the overnight metrics from Premier Tech's international offices. Everything running smoothly. Revenue projections on track, no major issues requiring immediate attention. At 6:30, I put on one of my 3 polo shirts, the blue one. Khaki pants from the discount store, my New Balance sneakers, my $30 Casio watch. Looked in the mirror and saw exactly what my son-in-law sees. An old man who peaked decades ago and now just shuffles through retirement with nothing important to contribute. I drove my Honda Civic to the Premier Tech campus on the north side of town. 43 acres of modern glass buildings and carefully landscaped grounds. The main building is 8 stories tall, with floor-to-ceiling windows and an atrium lobby full of expensive furniture and abstract art. I've been coming here 3 or 4 times a year for the past decade, always quietly, always without announcement. Most employees have no idea who I am. I parked in the visitor lot, not the executive parking area where my son-in-law's BMW sits in its reserved spot, just a regular space near the back. Walked across the parking lot carrying my old leather briefcase that's been with me since 1989. The security guard at the front desk looked up when I entered. "Morning, sir. Here for the board meeting?" He checked his computer screen. "Yes, sir. Conference room A on the 8th floor. They're expecting you." The elevator ride up was quiet. Just me and my thoughts. And the knowledge that in about 30 minutes, my son-in-law's entire worldview was going to collapse. The 8th floor is executive territory. Thick carpets, original artwork on the walls, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. The conference room takes up the entire southwest corner. 20-foot table made from reclaimed wood. Ergonomic chairs that cost more than my car. Video conferencing equipment that could broadcast to every corner of the planet. 6 people were already seated when I walked in. The board of directors, people I've known for years, some for decades. People who've helped me build premier tech from a 3-person operation in my garage to a $300 million enterprise employing over 800 people. "Good morning," I said. "Morning," came the chorus of replies. Coffee was poured, laptops opened. The meeting began at exactly 9. I took my seat at the head of the table, the chairman's seat that's been mine since we incorporated in 1984. Thank you all for coming on short notice. Our chief operating officer spoke first. "Your message said it was urgent?" "Personnel matter." I nodded. "We need to discuss a situation in the sales department, specifically regarding one employee who seems to have some misconceptions about how this company operates and who makes decisions here." I pulled up the file I'd prepared over the weekend. His employment record, his performance metrics, his salary history, and his recent behavior patterns, including complaints from coworkers about condescending attitudes and taking credit for team efforts. The director of human resources reviewed the documents on her tablet. "This is the employee who's been requesting a promotion to director level?" "That's correct." "Has he earned it?" She scrolled through his metrics. His numbers are adequate, but not exceptional. His peer reviews are mixed. Several team members have noted concerns about collaboration and attitude. The promotion request was flagged for further review. I pulled up another document. This is a transcript of a conversation that took place at a family dinner 2 nights ago. The board members read in silence. I watched their faces change as they absorbed what my son-in-law had said about outdated technology and irrelevant old men, and how the founder probably didn't understand modern business. The chief financial officer looked up first. "This employee is your son-in-law?" "Yes."
My son-in-law's face had gone from confident to pale in the span of 30 seconds. He sat across from me, gripping the arms of his chair like it might save him from what was happening. The 6 board members waited. I pulled up a document on the large screen at the end of the conference room. His complete employment record. Every project, every metric, every review. Let's walk through your performance history. Your first year here was solid. Good metrics, positive peer reviews. You were learning the systems and contributing to team efforts. Your manager noted that you showed promise. He nodded weakly. Second year, things started to change. Your individual numbers stayed consistent, but the peer reviews began including comments about attitude, taking credit for collaborative work, dismissing input from team members with more experience. Several people mentioned that you seemed more focused on appearance than substance. The human resources director added her notes. "We had 3 separate complaints filed by coworkers during your second year, all related to interpersonal conflicts and credit attribution. You were counseled twice by your department manager about team dynamics." My son-in-law's voice came out strained. "Those were misunderstandings. People were jealous of my success." I looked at him directly. "Were they? Because your actual sales numbers for year 2 were nearly identical to year 1. You closed the same number of deals at roughly the same value. The only thing that changed was how you talked about those deals." He had no response to that. I continued. "Year 3, that's this current year. Your numbers are actually down slightly from previous years. You've been part of 6 major deals but led none of them. The largest account you mentioned at dinner, the one you said you closed personally, that was a team effort led by someone else. You contributed, but you were 4th out of 7 people involved in that sale." The chief financial officer pulled up the revenue attribution report. "According to our tracking system, your individual contribution to that deal was approximately 11%. The lead account manager contributed 42%. My son-in-law slumped in his chair. "I didn't know you tracked it that specifically." "We track everything specifically. That's how we know who's actually driving revenue and who's just along for the ride." I pulled up another document. "Now let's talk about your promotion request. You've been telling people it's basically guaranteed.
that the executive team knows your value, that your metrics speak for themselves. He looked at his hands. The director of human resources spoke. Your promotion request was submitted 4 months ago. It's been under review because your performance doesn't clearly justify a jump to director level. Director positions require demonstrated leadership, consistent high performance, and strong interpersonal skills. Your file shows adequate performance and concerning interpersonal patterns. But I thought, he started, then stopped. You thought what? That nobody was paying attention? That you could talk your way into a promotion without actually earning it? He didn't answer. I leaned forward. Here's what concerns me most. It's not the inflated self-assessment. Lots of people overestimate their contributions. It's not even the interpersonal issues. Those can be addressed with coaching and self-awareness. What concerns me is the fundamental lack of curiosity. You've worked here for 3 years and never once researched the company's history, never wondered about the leadership structure, never asked questions about how decisions get made or who makes them. The chief operating officer added, you've been operating on assumptions, assuming the founder was irrelevant, assuming the board would rubber stamp your promotion, assuming your metrics were exceptional when they're actually average, assuming that confidence and actual competence are the same thing. My son-in-law finally found his voice. I made a mistake. A mistake is forgetting to copy someone on an email. What you did Saturday night was reveal a pattern of thinking that's been building for 3 years. You didn't just insult me personally. You insulted the foundation this entire company was built on. You dismissed the work of people who created the jobs and opportunities you've been benefiting from. And you did it confidently, publicly, in front of witnesses, because you genuinely believed you were right. He was staring at the table now. I'm sorry. Are you? Or are you sorry you got caught? The room stayed quiet. I pulled up one more document. This is a complete analysis of your career trajectory here. If you had stayed on your year 1 path, focused on learning, collaborated effectively, and built genuine expertise, you'd probably be looking at a legitimate promotion within the next 18 months. Instead, you spent 2 years managing perceptions instead of improving performance. So now we're here. What happens now? He asked quietly. Now we make a decision based on facts. The board needs to determine whether you have the character and judgment required for advancement in this company. Our general counsel spoke for the first time. The concern isn't just performance metrics, it's trustworthiness. If you'll misrepresent your contributions internally and insult the company's founder externally, what else might you misrepresent to clients or partners? My son-in-law looked up sharply. I would never lie to clients. Nobody said lie. We're talking about a pattern of exaggeration, credit-taking, and dismissiveness towards people you think can't affect your career. That pattern is concerning regardless of where it's directed. I stood up and walked to the window. 8 stories below, employees were arriving for work, parking their cars, carrying their coffee, starting another Monday at a company that provides jobs and stability and opportunities for 800 people across 4 states. Most of them don't need to know who founded this company. Most of them don't need to know. They do their work honestly and go home to their families, and that's perfectly fine. But you wanted more than that. You wanted recognition and promotion and status. And there's nothing wrong with ambition, but ambition without self-awareness is just arrogance. And arrogance without competence is just embarrassing. I turned back to face him. So here's what's going to happen. The board is going to review your complete file. We're going to interview your colleagues and clients. We're going to assess whether you have the judgment and character for leadership at this company. That process will take approximately 2 weeks. In the meantime, you'll continue in your current role with your current responsibilities. The Human Resources Director added, you'll also be required to attend 3 coaching sessions focused on interpersonal dynamics and accurate self-assessment. These aren't optional. My son-in-law nodded slowly. What if the board decides I don't qualify for promotion? Then you don't get promoted. You stay in your current role and focus on actually developing the skills you've been claiming to have. And if I can't accept that, then you're welcome to seek opportunities elsewhere. We don't hold people hostage. But I'd encourage you to think carefully about what story you'd tell in your next interview about why you left. He stood up on shaky legs. Can I ask you something? Go ahead. Why didn't you tell me who you were? Why let this go on for so long? I walked back to my seat. Because I wanted to see who you really were when you thought nobody important was watching. People reveal their true character when they think there are no consequences. You revealed yours at a family dinner when you thought you were just mocking a harmless old man who couldn't affect your career. And now? Now you know that the harmless old man signs your paychecks, that every promotion, every raise, every opportunity you've had here exists because of decisions made by people you dismissed as irrelevant, that confidence without confidence is just noise, and that in any company, any relationship, any situation, you should never assume you know someone's full story just because you've seen their car or their clothes or their phone. My son-in-law stood there processing everything. The board members closed their laptops. Our meeting was essentially over. You're dismissed, I said. Return to your department. Your manager will contact you about the coaching sessions. We'll follow up in 2 weeks with our decision. He walked to the door, turned back one more time. Sir, I really am sorry. I nodded. Then prove it. Not with words. With sustained changes in behavior over time. That's the only apology that matters in business or family. He left. The conference room door closed behind him with a soft click.
The board meeting continued for another hour after my son-in-law left. We reviewed his complete file in detail, discussed the coaching plan, outlined the evaluation criteria we'd use to make our final decision. By 11 o'clock, we'd established a clear framework. He would get 2 weeks to demonstrate genuine change, not performative change, not temporary good behavior designed to survive the review period. Real sustainable shift in how he approached his work and his colleagues. The Human Resources Director volunteered to personally oversee the coaching sessions and coordinate with his department manager on daily observations. Our Chief Operating Officer suggested we also interview 5 of his closest co-workers confidentially to get unfiltered perspectives on his behavior patterns. The General Counsel recommended we document everything meticulously in case this became a legal matter down the road. By noon, the plan was set. I drove home in my Honda Civic, thinking about my granddaughter's question at dinner. "What did you do before you retired, Grandpa?" She'd asked it with genuine curiosity, the kind of innocent question that deserved a real answer, and my son-in-law had cut me off before I could give her one. That evening, my daughter called. Her voice was tight with emotion. "Dad, what happened today?" "Your husband had a performance review. He came home 3 hours ago and hasn't left our bedroom. He won't tell me what happened, except that you were there and the board was there and everything he thought he knew was wrong." I explained the situation calmly, told her about the meeting, the review process, the 2-week evaluation period. I didn't tell her about the coaching sessions or the colleague interviews. Those were personnel matters between the company and her husband. She was quiet for a long time. Then, "Dad, why didn't you ever tell us?" "Tell you what? That you founded Premier Tech? That you're the chairman? That you built the whole thing? I've driven past that building 100 times and never knew my father created it." "Because you never asked." "Emma, when's the last time you or your husband asked me anything about my life beyond surface-level pleasantries?" She didn't have an answer. "That's what I thought. Your husband spent 3 years working at a company without bothering to learn its history. You've spent 30 years as my daughter without bothering to understand what I actually did with my career. Both of you saw an old man in cheap clothes driving an old car and decided that told you everything you needed to know. But Dad, you let us think." "I let you reveal who you really are when you think nobody's watching. That's the most honest version of a person. And what I saw was a son-in-law who thought mocking me would impress his colleagues, and a daughter who smiled politely while it happened. She started crying. I didn't know what to say. I should have defended you. Yes, you should have. But you didn't because some part of you agreed with him. Some part of you was embarrassed by your old-fashioned father who doesn't understand modern technology or contemporary business. The phone line was quiet except for her crying. Finally, she spoke. What happens now? Now your husband has 2 weeks to prove he can be the person he should have been all along. Someone who does his job honestly, treats people with respect regardless of their position, and understands that there's always more to people than what you see on the surface. And if he can't prove that, then he doesn't get promoted, and he needs to decide if he can live with staying in his current role or if he needs to find somewhere else to work. What about us? What about our family? That's between you and him. I'm not going to let family relationships interfere with business decisions. He will be evaluated on his merits like any other employee. If he earns the promotion through genuine, improved performance and character development, he'll get it. If he doesn't, he won't. We hung up. My wife had been listening from the kitchen. How do you feel? She asked. Tired, I admitted, but also relieved. This needed to happen. The 2 weeks that followed were interesting. My son-in-law showed up to all 3 coaching sessions. According to the human resources director, he was genuinely engaged, asked difficult questions, acknowledged uncomfortable truths about his behavior patterns, started recognizing how his need for external validation had led him to exaggerate accomplishments and dismiss people he perceived as less successful. The colleague interviews revealed mixed perspectives. Some people had written him off as arrogant and unteachable. Others saw potential beneath the insecurity. One senior account manager said something that stuck with me. He's got talent buried under all that performance anxiety. If he can let go of needing everyone to think he's special, he might actually become good at this. His department manager reported subtle changes, more listening in meetings, more credit sharing on projects, fewer condescending comments about other people's ideas. Small shifts, but consistent ones. Not perfect, but directionally correct. At the end of 2 weeks, the board reconvened. We reviewed all the documentation, the coaching reports, the colleague feedback, the manager observations, the metrics, which had actually improved slightly as he focused more on work and less on image management. Our chief operating officer spoke first. He's made genuine effort. The question is whether it's sustainable or just survival behavior until the review period ends. The human resources director disagreed. I've done hundreds of coaching interventions. This one feels different. He's asking the kind of questions people ask when they're actually ready to change, not just when they're trying to avoid consequences. We debated for an hour. Finally, we voted. The decision was unanimous. No promotion. Not yet. But continued employment in his current role with quarterly reviews and ongoing coaching support. If he maintained the improvements for 6 months, we'd revisit the director discussion. If he regressed to old patterns, we'd part ways professionally. I called him into my office that afternoon, not the conference room, my actual office on the 8th floor that I use a few times a year, the one with photographs from 1984 when we incorporated, the original business plan framed on the wall, the patents for software innovations we developed in the 90s. He knocked quietly, came in looking nervous, sat down when I gestured to the chair. The board made their decision. He nodded, waiting. You're not getting the promotion. Not now. His face showed disappointment, but not surprise. Your performance over the past 2 weeks has been encouraging, but 2 weeks doesn't erase 3 years of patterns. We need to see sustained change over time. He took a breath. How much time? 6 months minimum. Quarterly reviews, continued coaching, consistent demonstration of the behaviors you've shown in the past 2 weeks. If you can maintain that trajectory, we'll revisit the director conversation. And if I can't, then we'll part ways professionally and you'll need to find somewhere else to work. No hard feelings, but also no more chances. He nodded slowly. That's fair. More than fair, actually. I pulled out a folder. This is documentation of everything we discussed. The expectations, the review schedule, the coaching plan. Read it carefully, sign it if you agreed to the terms. He read through the pages carefully, signed at the bottom, and handed it back. Can I ask you something? Go ahead. Do you think I can actually do this? Change enough to earn the promotion eventually? I leaned back in my chair. Honestly, I don't know. Change is hard, especially changing patterns that have been rewarded in the past. You've gotten decent results with your current approach, so part of your brain thinks it works. But here's what I do know. The version of you I saw at that dinner 2 weeks ago, that person will never be a director at this company or any company worth working for. That person is too insecure, too focused on appearance, too dismissive of others. But the version of you I've seen in coaching reports and manager observations over the past 2 weeks, that person has potential. The question is, which version is the real you? He stood up. Thank you for the chance. Don't thank me yet. Thank me in 6 months if you've actually done the work. 3 months have passed since that conversation. My son-in-law is still employed at Premier Tech. His metrics continue to improve. His peer relations are better. His quarterly review last week showed consistent progress. He still has moments of falling into old patterns, but he catches himself faster now, apologizes when he takes too much credit, asks questions instead of making assumptions. My daughter and I have dinner once a month now, just the two of us. She asks about my work, about the early days building the company, about the decisions I made and why I made them. She started asking better questions about a lot of things. My granddaughter knows now that Grandpa founded the company where her dad works. She thinks it's cool, asks me to tell stories about the old days when computers were huge and the internet was new. I drive the same Honda Civic, wear the same 3 polo shirts, use the same $30 watch. Not because I have to, but because I want to. Because the car gets me where I need to go, and the shirts are comfortable, and the watch tells time just fine. My son-in-law still drives his BMW and wears expensive suits. But now when we see each other at family dinners, he asks questions instead of making assumptions. Last Sunday, he asked about the early days of Premier Tech, what it was like building something from nothing, what mistakes I made, what I'd do differently. We talked for an hour. My daughter listened. My granddaughter drew pictures at the other end of the table. And for the first time in 3 years, it felt like we were actually family instead of...
Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.